Okay, thank you to everyone who is joining us live for this webinar. So I think one of my colleagues is just going to take away the screen and then we'll say hello. So if those of you don't know me, I'm sure most of you do, my name's Andrew Crisp and I'm the head of the middle school. And I'm really pleased to welcome with me tonight Ben Simmons. He is at the bottom of my screen. I'm not sure how it's coming across on the webinar on your screen, but he is the Deputy Head Academic. And he's going to talk to you this evening about mocks, results, revision, and particularly Easter, as that's a key time. My other colleague here is Oliver Lomax, and he is the Curriculum Director, and he's going to be talking about options and how we're wanting to timetable that for A-levels and courses next year. I will finish off and talk a little bit about supporting students with their well-being and just academic support as well through this period. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you, it is an intense period of time. It will have started at the beginning of the 5th year, but also especially over Christmas, preparing for mocks, going through the mocks and then getting that feedback back. So this is called the Parents' Evening webinar because usually in previous years, in between your appointments, we would have wanted to give you this key information in the Amy Theatre, but now we're having one-to-one conversation online. We still wanted you to have this information. So there are a number of you joining us now, but this is being recorded. So some of you will be hearing this later on as we send out the recording to all our parents. So I'd like to now hand over to Ben Simmons, and he's now going to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crisp, for your kind introduction. I'm going to speak for the next maybe 20-25 minutes about the journey from now until A-level results day. The bit about actually making choices, Mr. Lomax will cover, but I'm going to cover a sort of broad overview of the next steps. You'll be aware that the students have finished their mock exams, and in their lessons over the past couple of weeks, they've been going through the papers after these have been marked by the teachers, and the teachers have also been standardising these. Tomorrow, we're collecting the results from all of the departments, and we'll be formally publishing these results to both the pupils and the parents at the end of this week. A key thing which is important about these mock results is that the mock exam often only covers a select part of the GCSE content. So it may be the case that in the actual exam, there's 2 or 3 papers, whereas actually only a proportion of that was focused on. And for many subjects, the final GCSE grade will also include a controlled assessment component, and the mock often won't include that because it will be just based on the papers that were studied after Christmas or taken after Christmas. It's important to note, though, that the results from the mocks do have a tentative predictive value for how the students will do in their final exams. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute, but the results we do find are useful for sort of working out whereabouts this particular student sits in terms of their A-level achievement at this point. Perhaps most importantly, though, the thing about the mocks which is most significant is that they're a really good opportunity for students to identify which parts of the course they're most confident about and which parts of the course they need to sort of plug gaps in their knowledge. And the time between the mocks and the actual exams gives time for the teachers to go through those bits with the students individually, or for the students to go away and learn particular things that they need to in their own time. Just a quick reminder about the entrance criteria for sixth form at Abingdon. The way that we calculate the sort of average for the grade that they need to get into sixth form is we take all of the GCSE grades, we add them together, and we divide by the number of subjects in total. And to get into the sixth form, you need to gain an average of a grade 6 across all the subjects, and you need a minimum of the grade 7 in the subjects chosen for A-level, and the exception for that is in further maths, where you need a minimum of a grade 8. So when you get the mock results later this week, you'll be able to see the average score that your child achieved. And just to give you an idea about how we look at those scores, if the average score in the mock was above a 6, we think that that was absolutely fine. We rarely see scores go down between the mocks and the final exams. A score between 5.5 and 6, at this point, this would be slightly concerning, but overall, we think that this will end up fine. If the score was between 5 and 5.5 on average, at this point, we'd be thinking quite a few things need to go well from this point onwards in order to achieve sixth form entrance, and scores below 5 would give us more serious concern, and traditionally we would see that people who had a score below a 5 wouldn't achieve the entry requirements required to get into the sixth form for September onwards. In terms of results, as a school, we'll be looking at the results in a lot more detail, and various people, heads of house, tutors, and the academic team will be looking at individual student results, and some of those results will be follow-upping on in more detail. And ways or things we might do to follow up include getting some support from the learning support team for a particular pupil, engaging with the pastoral teams to support a particular pupil about things that they might need pastorally supporting on, and I think Mr. Crisp is going to touch on this later. If there's an individual subject that a student would need to work on more than others, we offer a range of subject clinics where they can sort of focus on particular areas which they need to develop. And then for students who struggle to study across the board and struggle to focus on their work, we run a supervised study session once or twice a week where those students would go in and they'd be supervised by a member of staff doing study, and that's basically to help them get through work if they're struggling to in their own time. One of the things I'd like to pick up on here is when we're talking about the average grade, that average includes all the subjects, and Abingdon isn't a school that allows students to drop a subject between the mocks and the final exams, with the caveat that there is an exception if there's a very severe pastoral or SEND need, but we only see maybe 3 students a year that this applies to. So if it's the case that your child gets a very low grade in, say, electronics, they can't drop electronics between now and the final exam. They're going to need to work on that and work with their teachers and the pastoral team to help them develop their knowledge in that particular area. This all sounds very downbeat up to this point, but it's worth highlighting specifically that the vast majority of students do improve their grades between the mocks and the final GCSE exams. The reason mainly for this is the huge amount of work that they do in between this point and when the exams are. And we see, looking at previous data, that the average student will improve between 0.5 and 1 grade across all of their subjects. As I said before, it's very rare for a score to drop on average between the mock and the real exams. There was a slight exception to this in a few cases, and you may have students or children who are in the sixth form at the moment and know that there were a few problems with the English exams in the last 2 years, but having sort of addressed this head on and changed the exam board and put a few other mitigations in place, we're confident that this won't happen again from this summer onwards. So having a look at the next steps, it's not actually very long until the students go on study leave. We only have about 2.5 weeks until half term, and then there's only about 5 weeks in the second half of term until Easter, and then about 3 weeks in the summer term. So that only gives approximately 10 teaching weeks before study leave begins on Friday the 3rd of May. And so I really encourage the students to make the most of this time, and starting with that information that they've identified from the mocks in terms of areas of knowledge that they need developing and further areas of knowledge that are going to arise from the testing sort of internally in classes and sort of informal testing that will go on as part of the revision. It's really important that the teachers are being utilised to their full extent to explain the things which students are struggling on for the time being. I mentioned before about subject clinics. This is just a sample of our subject clinic timetable, and the students have access to a full list of subject clinics. As I said, if there is a particular subject that a student is struggling with, then I do encourage them to have a look at the subject clinic rota and go along to that clinic. It could be a one-off to explain a particular concept, or it could be that actually they're struggling in Chinese a bit more than other subjects, and hence they want to go along on a weekly basis to build up that knowledge in that particular area. But all the departments have clinics and have extra support available if there are areas that students would like to work on between now and the exams, in addition to the sort of things that the teachers are doing as part of their normal revision. You'll be aware that next week on Monday and Tuesday we have our parents' evening, and I just wanted to go through a few points about what you should expect from that parents' evening. So firstly, you should receive from the teachers an honest but realistic sense of your child's performance and progression. And hopefully there will also be highlights of their strengths and also weaknesses and areas for development between now and the summer exams. You'll have an idea probably about which subjects your child wants to carry on studying in sixth form. And we would also anticipate that there will be an honest conversation between you and your child and the teachers about whether that subject is suited at A level. So it may be that that subject is something which the teacher feels is definitely suited to your child. It may be that that's probably going to be okay, but there's a few things that need to be worked on. Or it may be that in some cases, actually, it might be worth looking at some other subjects in order to gain the most success during the sixth form career. And that's based on experience and the level that we know students are at the moment in their GCSEs and how generally we expect people to develop throughout their A level. Now, looking forward to the Easter break, our usual recommendation for students, and I'll be doing an assembly for students on this as well, is that they do 90 hours of revision over the Easter holidays. They've got 24 days in the Easter holidays approximately, and 90 hours is 16% of that total time. Now, you might say, what about sleeping? Assuming that a student has 8 hours sleep per night, 23% of the time will be spent sleeping, which would leave then 61% of the time available for other activities. The most important thing about revising at Easter is making a plan. And it doesn't matter what sort of plan you use, whether it's the plan that I'm going to go through now or whether it's your own plan, but you need to plan in one way or another. So thinking about what I've suggested in terms of the 90 hours, how do I get to this? We know that there's 3 weeks of holiday. Let's assume that you take the weekends off as you normally would in the school kind of term time, apart from doing homework. And let's assume that you break the weekdays down into 3-3-hour sessions with breaks in between. So within those 3-hour sessions, it's actually one hour and then a break, then 1 hour, then a break, and then another hour, and then a longer break, and then your next sort of slot of 3 hours in the afternoon, your next slot of 3 individual hours in the evening. I've said there's 3 of those potentially per day, but you're going to want to do other things as well and see friends and make the most of the holiday as well. So perhaps you pick 2 of those sessions per day. And if you pick 2 of those sessions per day and each one is 3 hours long and you do those for 5 days a week, taking the weekends off, and you have 3 weeks of holiday, that gives you the 90 hours that I originally suggested on the previous slide. So how would you go about formulating this into a revision timetable? Well, this is one that I've done on Excel and I just copied it across. But I would lay out the days of the week and I would lay out the sessions which are possible for revision. And then I would block out days that don't work for you. So in this case, I would say I wouldn't like to work on Saturday and Sunday because I've got other things going on. And I would then also block out another session per day when I know that I'm going to be doing something else. So on Monday, I play in a brass band, and so I blocked out the evening. Maybe on Tuesday afternoon, it's the case that I'm meeting some friends. Maybe on Thursday morning, I want to have a lie-in, so I've chosen to block that particular session out there. Once you've got your sessions that you know are sessions which you can revise in, I would then at that point split the subjects into those sessions, making sure that I've sort of given each subject a suitable amount of time by sharing the time across all those slots. It may be that you feel that actually you need to work on maths slightly more than you need to work on Latin, in which case you might give maths a bit more time, but I would be very cautious about devoting too much time to an individual subject and sort of letting other subjects slip as a consequence. So make sure that there is an overall breadth in terms of those subjects that are being covered and everything is given its fair amount of time. I would then have a look at the topics that I would revise, and you'll be able to get the specification lists from the teachers, and they'll be providing you with those, or you can go onto the exam board website and download the specification lists and topics. And I would split those individual revision sessions into the different topics that you would cover over that time. It may be the case that you don't want to do maths all on a Monday morning from 9 until 12:30, and you think, actually, I think I'd be better off splitting those sessions up. That's absolutely fine. If that's the case, do an hour of maths and then timetable in an hour of English and then an hour of French. It doesn't matter which strategy you go for as long as that strategy works for you. As I said before, it doesn't matter at all if my plan doesn't work for you. But the most important thing is that you replace it with a plan that you've come up with, you've planned out your time, and you don't just revise what you feel like revising on that particular day, because in that sort of situation, that's when things would end up not in the place where you'd want them to be when you come back to school after Easter. We know that people have an attention span of a maximum of around an hour for any topic or activity. And therefore, within that 3-hour session, you've got the breaks in there. But I would also really encourage you to have multiple elements to how you revise. So maybe at one point you're making notes, then you're doing a test question, and then you're consolidating your notes. And making sure that there is a sort of process in place for actually testing that knowledge. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a minute. Perhaps quite importantly, it's important to think about where you're revising and avoiding distractions, making sure that your phone's not going off, making sure that the TV isn't on, making sure that the iPad's not available. Is the revision space that you're revising in the right space for that? As I said before, it's really important that that revision is an active process. Just sitting and turning the pages of a book is almost useless without some sort of consolidation and testing. So make sure if you're rereading things, you're also making notes, make sure you're consolidating these notes and kind of boiling them down to individual triggers and in terms of sort of key points, and sort of maybe summarizing your physics notes to a page of key points about physics, and then testing your knowledge and skills against past paper questions. In terms of sort of knowing the standard, the past paper questions really are the sort of key thing to go by, because they're marked, and sort of mark schemes are at the exam board standard that you need to use. And those past paper questions are always available on the website for the exam board, so you can go and have a look at those. Perhaps very importantly as well, as sort of various topics are gone through, it may be that parents are asked to help if there's particular areas that you're able to help with. But if there are areas which sort of are still difficult towards the end of the holidays, then I really suggest keeping a list of topics that you're not sure of is a really good thing to do, because then when you come back to school, you can use the teachers to sort of help you with those particular things you're not sure of, or go through those in the clinics. The worst thing to do is just sort of ignore them and forget about them, and then realize later on when it's too late that you haven't been able to follow up on those. Once the Easter holiday is over, as I said before, there's about 3 weeks of teaching left, and this is the time where students can get their remaining questions answered and really will be sort of gearing up towards those exams. After those 3 weeks in which everybody is in school, there's then 3 weeks of clinic support, which is then voluntary. So we run a clinic timetable during the normal school day, and the lessons times match our lesson times. And within those days, there will be a combination of supervised study where students can come in and go to a classroom and be supervised. And there will also be normal lessons they can go to. So maybe period 1, they can go to chemistry to get some chemistry help if they want to. And then period 2, they can go to maths for some maths help. As I said, that is voluntary. And those 3 weeks are there really for students who would find it easier to revise from school rather than from home, or if it's the case that students have got individual questions that they would like to answer, or like a teacher to answer and help them to go through in that period of time. Some key points about exams, and I'm sure the parents know this and are already encouraging it. A bit like sort of training for a marathon. Remember, it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. The exam season is quite long and lots of subjects have multiple papers. So it really is about that preparation that goes on in advance and what you do over the coming weeks and in the Easter holiday in order to benefit you in those exams when they then sort of start properly. And you've got an exam in the morning, then one in the afternoon, and then one the following day. And actually it can be quite a grueling schedule when they start. Quite importantly, to do with the training and the fact that it's a marathon and not a sprint, is please remember sort of just the evening before, it is good to relax and let your brain rest and reorder things. It might be that you want to look over a few key prompt cards and a few key points, but that really isn't the time to be cramming, because all your training should have been done in advance. As a physics teacher, I say this to students a lot when I'm going through past paper questions. One of the things that particularly academic students struggle with is often assuming that the question is asking a particular thing, and really making sure that the question has been read properly, read the question, and also that they're answering the question properly, i.e. ATQ or answer the question, and using mark schemes to know what the success criteria are. One of the things that we notice a lot is students, particularly when they're revising, they'll do past paper questions and they will mark them, but they'll give themselves the benefit of the doubt because they sort of thought that they were saying that thing, or they sort of thought that the mark scheme was saying what they were indicating. And so if you do have time as a parent and are supporting your child in the Easter holidays, as I'm sure a lot of you will be, just looking over questions, particularly if it's subjects that you're familiar with, and asking to sort of maybe mark a paper or a few questions would be beneficial, even if it's the case that you're saying, oh, I'm not quite sure whether you've answered the question here. Maybe your child will justify that they have, but it is really good to get them thinking about that process. Once exams have finished, the most important thing is having a break, and I'm sure lots of your children will be really looking forward to the extended summer holiday. We do have a sixth form induction day, and this will be published in more detail in the weekly mailing, and this will take place on Wednesday, the 26th of June. And this is the exam contingency day, and this is a day which I'm sure you'll have already been written to about by the exams office. Basically, we had to keep it free in case an exam gets moved for any reason. So it sort of came into being because of COVID, but if there's a problem with a particular exam, then that exam will be moved to that day at the end of the exam period. We don't expect any exams to be moved to that point, but everybody has to be available just in case. And so on that day, we will be running a sixth form induction day, unless it's the case that that an exam gets moved, in which case, obviously, that would get priority. It may be the case that you've already booked a holiday at that point, in which case that's absolutely fine. This isn't something which is a compulsory day. It's something which we hope will just help the students sort of get ready for that transition to being in the sixth form. On that day, the subjects will provide some stimulus material for A-level, but this really will be sort of a maximum of a day's work per subject, which over the course of that extended summer holiday of multiple weeks more than it would normally be, the purpose will just be to sort of get them back into the working spirit before they get back to school. Obviously, over that summer holiday, this is a sort of, could be thought of as a break point in terms of the education between GCSE and A-level. And this really is the time to be making sure that Abingdon really is the place to be for sixth form, and sort of thinking about that and thinking about which subjects you want to do going forward, which Mr. Lomax will talk about in terms of the timelines there. Results day is Thursday, the 22nd of August, 2024. And it's important to say that you don't have to be there in person for results day. Students can pick up their results online. But certainly, if you are in the position, having got the mock results, that perhaps the results are a slight concern, if it gets to results day and the results are still a concern, and either you're looking for help to find a place in another school or talking about sixth form here, perhaps if you've just about reached that average of a grade 6, then it is easier to have those conversations in person should an issue arise. I've been in a difficult conversation in the past where somebody's been in the middle of a desert and there hasn't been any signal. It's really difficult to sort of work out the next steps going forward if that is the case. That's the end of my section of this presentation. I think we're going to take questions at the end, and I'll answer any individually in the chat while Mr. Lomax is talking, but I will now let Mr. Lomax take over from the subject preferences point of view. I think Mr. Crisp is going to say something in between.
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. A few people have been putting questions through in the question and answer function. Please, if you do have questions, use the question and answer function. We won't be monitoring the chat function, and I think that's not available to you. So if you do have any questions, please put them in there. Thank you very much.
Okay, so yes, we're going to just look slightly further ahead now, beyond the GCSE results. Hopefully, most people are really pleased with their GCSE results after results day, and they're looking forward to the sixth form at Abingdon and the subjects they're going to study. Just trying to get on to the next slide. Here we go. So this is the kind of the schedule. I've already, back in November, asked everyone in the fifth year for their tentative subject preferences, the subjects they're thinking of choosing for A-level. Next week, we have a whole day. Thursday is given over to taster lessons. So they have all signed up and filled in a form saying which subjects they'd like to kind of find out more about. And the idea of this day is they can sit down and have a lesson and a sort of an A-level lesson in computer science or French, whatever it is, find out what it's like, what that subject is like. It's a bit of a chance to ask questions about what the A-level might be like, and give them a little feel of what being in the sixth form is like. Now, after that, the deadline for actually choosing the subjects they want to do for A-level is very soon. It's the 5th of February. So there's quite a quick kind of turnaround here. We've got the parents' evening in between as well. So there's a fairly short deadline for choosing the actual subjects they want to study, and at that point, after that point, I'll start putting together the timetable for next September. So the first thing is how many subjects. All the lower sixth students study 4 subjects for at least the first term. Some will go on and study 4 subjects all the way through to the end of the upper sixth for A-level. But they're given the chance to drop a subject after the first term down to 3 subjects. And at any point really during the lower sixth or even into the upper sixth, there will be some students dropping down to 3 subjects. Yes, many will drop to 3. Some will stay on all 4. Now, which ones do they choose? If they know they're going to only want to do 3 subjects, we still ask them to choose 4 subjects to begin with. This is mainly because it gives them a chance to actually try out all 4 subjects and realize what it's really like. They may think right now that they definitely want to study biology. After studying it for 6 weeks in September, they might decide they've made a terrible mistake. And by having 4 subjects, they've got a sort of fallback plan. They can drop the one they're struggling in and carry on with 3. This is the list of subjects we have on offer in the sixth form at Abingdon. Most of those are subjects they can also study for GCSE. The ones in pink are going to be new to them going into the sixth form because we don't have these subjects in the 5th year. There are some subjects that they can choose having not done the GCSE. In fact, probably most subjects could be done without having done the GCSE. And in those cases, you would need to, or the student would have to talk to the head of department and see, is it appropriate? Would they be able to cope? So, for example, ancient history, quite often we've had people choosing A-level ancient history. They haven't done the GCSE, but they have done history and they have done English, and they've proved they're quite good at those subjects. So we'd be very happy for them to take the A-level. Okay, who do we get advice from? Lots of people. There's lots of advice out there when choosing subjects, and hopefully many of these conversations have been happening already as they choose their taster lessons and tentative choices. The taster lessons will, as I say, provide another opportunity to meet a teacher of that subject and talk a bit more about it. There is Mrs. Hodnott and actually Mr. Ambrose in the UCAS office. So it might be useful to get some information about which A-levels would lead on to certain university qualifications. So if perhaps you're thinking, I definitely want to do engineering at university, do I need to study physics? Do I need to study maths A-level? That's the sort of question you could go to Mrs. Hodnott and ask. And similarly, if you have a particular career in mind, you would go to Mr. Triff perhaps to find out what A-levels would be useful for that. There's also more information in this sixth form curriculum booklet. It's on our website at that link there under the curriculum section under downloads, and I'll be sort of linking to that when I send more information out to the 5th year later, so they'll be able to find it. And that has a little bit of a write-up about each subject and a link to the exam specification so they can find out more information. Things to think about. What university courses might they apply for? Some students know at this point exactly what university course they want to go for. Some may have no idea, and that's fine. If you don't know what you're going to do at university, pick the A levels that you want to study at this point, and find out later on what university courses would be suitable with that selection of A levels. So don't worry. But if you do have a particular course in mind, obviously it's worth checking that the A levels are appropriate. Similarly, with a particular career in mind. Do they have a real interest and aptitude for the subject? It's all very well saying, I want to do this particular career, therefore I'm going to do maths A level. But if they're already struggling in maths and don't really enjoy it, then it might not be a sensible choice for A level. GCSEs, it's possible to get by and just put in the hard work and do very well in any subject if you work hard enough. A level, if you're not interested in the subject, it's going to be much harder to work hard and be successful in it. So try and choose subjects you actually want to do, is my advice. Make sure you're not choosing a subject just because you like the teacher, because your friends are doing it. Hopefully they won't choose a subject just because their parents tell them to, although I hope you'll be having conversations, but try not to force them into the subject that you would have done. Let them make their own choices to some extent there. Okay, what combinations, almost any combination of the subjects that I showed earlier is possible. Not maths and further maths. So further maths is an extra A level, but we teach it as one subject with maths. So they have slightly more lessons, 6 lessons a week instead of the usual 5 lessons a week for most subjects. So just one extra lesson a week in maths, and they end up taking 2 A levels, maths and further maths A levels. So further maths counts as one subject choice from my timetabling perspective. It does, of course, mean that it's quite a fast pace. They have to get through 2 A level courses in almost the same amount of time as a normal subject. So it's not for the faint-hearted. Make sure you're a good mathematician and obviously take the taster lesson and talk to the maths teacher if you're not sure whether you should be going for maths or further maths. Not RS and philosophy, both these subjects are taught by the philosophy and theology department. They are very different subjects in many ways, but there is some overlap. And so for that reason, we restrict students to choosing one or the other. And they will have been studying philosophy and theology in the 5th year, which is the religious studies GCSE. And that leads on to a philosophy A level very well, also onto a religious studies A level. And it's worth making sure that you're completely aware of what the difference is between those 2 A levels. So that's some extra information you might need to go and talk to the teacher about. Business and economics, we do allow students to take both of these A levels. They are both taught by the same department at Abingdon. They're in some respects similar, but we consider them discrete, separate enough that we're happy to have students studying both of them. However, some universities don't see them as being sufficiently different and might make an offer sort of only treating them as one subject. So particularly if you drop down to 3 subjects and you have business, economics, and one other, that could, with some universities, could cause problems. So we sort of advise you to be cautious of signing up for both those 2 subjects, but it is allowed. So with those caveats, there is still lots of flexibility in the subject choices available. I build the timetable around the subject choices that students have made. So some schools will have a kind of block system. You pick a subject from each block or something like that. We don't do that. And almost always, I manage to somehow make it work in the end and give everyone the subjects they want. Occasionally, though, there are unusual combinations that just turn out to be impossible for one person in the year group, and this doesn't happen every year. It's every few years there's a student who wants a particularly unusual subject combination and nobody else is doing it, and I can't timetable it. And if that is the case, I will get in touch with them as soon as I can, and we'll talk about the options and look at what might be possible. So I just have to sort of give you that warning that it is quite rare that happens, and usually I'm able to construct the timetable around what people would like to study. So what happens next? It's a short half term, so we have to sort of get a move on with this. A form will go out to the students next week. So it goes to the students, not the parents, as has been the case with previous years. So this goes to the students themselves. They select the 4 subjects and a 5th backup choice as well. They will hopefully be studying their 4 subjects. The 5th one is partly so that I know if I wasn't able to timetable the ones they want, I know what their next choice might be. But it also is if they change their mind about their subjects later on between now and September, it gives me an idea of what they might be thinking of switching to. So just gives us a bit of extra information. That's why I asked for the 5 subjects. It's only the 4 subjects that we really expect them to be taking at the beginning of the lower 6th. The deadline is Monday, the 5th of February. So we've actually got the parents' evenings next week, the taster lessons, then a weekend, and then the deadline is at the end of that Monday. So I know it's very short. Hopefully there is time in that week to talk to teachers at the parents' evening to consider things at the taster lessons and make a decision over the weekend. I understand, of course, that it's still a long way off from September, and some students will end up worrying about their choice and wanting to change their mind after that deadline. That's usually fine, absolutely fine. And at any time between the deadline and September, just let me know by email if you would like to change one of the subjects, and it's nearly always not a problem at all. Once I start constructing the timetable, things get locked in place, and it becomes potentially a problem to change subjects, but it is usually fine. So if you're at all concerned, just let me know as soon as possible that you would like to change from one subject to another, and I will hopefully make it work. Any questions? I've already talked about all the various people you can talk to for advice, but also, of course, do email me. My email address is there, and I can hopefully sort out any problems. And I think that is all I have to say for the moment. If you have any questions right now, do please put them in the Q&A. But otherwise, I'll have a look at that while I hand back over to Mr. Chris.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lomax. Thank you for your patience. We're giving a lot of information to you, and I've just got a little bit more, and then hopefully you can then enjoy the rest of your evening. So I just want to talk to you about the support that we will be offering about throughout, as I said, this intense period. We are mindful that it does have a lot of pressure on our students' well-being. Some of them take it in their stride, but others of them, it is an intense period. And I just want to talk about how we want to support students' well-being and them academically. So the tutors are a key person, and I just want to, obviously they see the students each day for registration, but that can be quite a short period of time they see them. But at the end of each term, and this happened just before the students broke up to go off to the Christmas holidays and their revision for the mocks, the 5th form tutors, well, in fact, all the middle school tutors, but the 5th year form tutors had one-to-one conversations with their tutees. And we're looking at things like which subjects are going well and not going well. How are you feeling about revision? Is that something you're confident with? And how are they rating their own well-being and important factors like sleep? If I go back to the first 2, how are the subjects going and how's your revision going? In one sense, that was quite a subjective, how the students were feeling. Now we've got a set of data which can actually add to that. It's not that those things weren't valid at that point, but hopefully as you have those one-to-one conversations with subject teachers and as tutors get the results and can talk that through, that adds to that picture and brings more substance to it. Obviously, the heads of house bring a lot of experience and they will see cohorts moving through. So they have, people dealt with their lower sixth and their upper sixth, last year and the year before as they were going through this exact experience. So they have a wealth of experience of students going through this, as I call it, intense period of time. Firefly, I'm going to refer to it to a couple of times. I often say in my presentations, it often equals what is your homework or your prep tonight, but there is so much more. And I think it's at this period of time in exams where it really comes into its own. So if I show you the next slide, there is lots and lots of support on offer on the wellbeing pages, dealing with exam stress, sleep hygiene, and lots of other issues that can come to the fore when the students feel the pressure. So that's a good place where it signposts where students can get support. We also have a group of sixth form mentors who have been trained in listening to other people and offering support and signposting help where they realize that more advanced support is needed. For me, the great advantage of this is these students have not long ago gone through the same experience as our fifth years, so they can often relate really, really well to what the experience is. So that's another level of support. We have an excellent team of counsellors and students all through the school experience from our first years right up to upper sixth. Go to the counsellors, but particularly at exams time, this can be a time where someone might wish to have some sessions and they can either talk to their tutor or head of house about referring them to the counsellors, or they can self-refer, and that is the email address. And a lot of our students do that and find that really, really supportive. In terms of academic support, I'm hoping, the aim of Monday and for some of you Tuesdays, parents even appointments is that you hear directly from the subject teachers who can give you specifics about how these students are performing, where they are, what did the mocks tell them in terms of their progress, what are the areas they need to work on in preparation for the final exams. And again, Firefly, each department has lots and lots of resources about revision, past papers. So Mr. Simmons was talking about actually measuring yourself against past papers with mark schemes is probably the most effective way. It's not the only thing, but it's one of the really key tools, and that lots of those things are published on the Firefly pages for each department. As been mentioned about clinics, I have sent out a link, and I'm happy to send that out again, perhaps after talking about it in this week's assembly, as the students are coming post parents' evening in mocks and maybe have a clear idea of where they want to spend their time in some of their long lunch breaks. Different subjects do it differently. Some people have drop-in clinics where people come along with an issue saying, I don't understand it, but other departments put out a schedule and say, we're looking at this exam skill this week, we're looking at this type of question another week. So it is actually quite detailed, and students have the opportunity to opt into that or not as they plan where they need to get support. In terms of revision, someone asked a question, having a template would be really good for doing that revision program. Learning support is a great place for, not all our students work directly with learning support, but if you go onto the Firefly, they have lots of resources which are really helpful for every member of the school community, and they have things about planning your revision and various things. So that's another resource where students might want to just dip into those resources for support. Just to sort of keep up to speed with what I shared, I did an assembly before Christmas about revision, and my two main messages was revision is an active process. It's not just staring at your books. I mean, I'm sort of over emphasizing the point, but it is actually about I'm making myself recall the information. And it's that action of recalling information, could be with past papers, is actually key, not just passively looking at, reducing notes to key points is all an active process. And again, as Mr. Simmons pointed out, have a plan, and that is essential for Easter as well. So in one sense, the mocks are just they are more than just going through the exams. They were about the revision process, and the students need to reflect also about how that went. And I know that's conversations that they're having with their tutors as well. I want to just bring to your attention a company called Elevate. They have years and years of experience. They usually have young people who come in and run seminars. So there's going to be a student seminar on the 12th of March, and that's in the school day, where they will give top tips from research that they've done and from their experience of working with young people. They are also running an evening seminar. We moved it from the 12th. I think there's a parents' evening at St. Helens and St. Catherine, so we've moved it to the next day. But I also want to point out that in the weekly mailing, I've brought to your attention, there are free webinars. So if you want the details of this, you need to go back to the weekly mailing on the 11th of January. And in there, there was a link to this. So these are 1 hour webinars, and they are run, they're free of charge. You just need to sign up. Now, as you notice, there's one tonight, and there may be some people who are at that webinar tonight and will watch our webinar when we send it out later. But the numbers I've been given back by Elevate is normally there's been about 50 to 70 of our parents who go regularly. So I hope that's been helpful. I have heard some of the parents, I haven't heard all of these, but for some people, I know that has been helpful and the advice they've been given. So if you want to book up for those, go to the weekly mailing on the 11th of January and you'll have all the links. Just to finish off, our general advice to fifth years would be, let us know how things are going. As I said, some people will go through this and it will be plain sailing for others. They will find it stressful and it will put pressure on them. And it's really important that, and it might be that you as parents pick up on it and just want to drop an email to the tutor to say that we sense things are not great. Just let us know, because the more we can have those conversations, the better it is. Our message to the students is ask for help, whether that's I don't understand this topic and talking to your subject teacher, or whether it's saying, can I speak to a peer support mentor, or going to see the counsellor, or just sitting down with a tutor. Ask for help, whatever the help is, whatever the nature of the help is. One thing that's really, really important throughout, especially the Easter holidays, is just keeping up exercise, eating healthily, and sleep is crucial. And I know that Mr. Simmons mentioned actually having some relaxation maybe the night before an exam actually could be really, really beneficial than cramming to the last moment. So these are all issues messages that we will be passing on to the students. Just one thing that it was in, I think the weekly mailing last week was that there is a careers event coming up. It's between the St. Helens St. Catherine OLA and our school, and this year it is in OLA, and there are, I think, more than you can read on the screen. There's a large number of parents and previous students who are coming in to deliver information and sessions, to give advice about different careers. This is a compulsory event for fifth year, but it is well worthwhile, and just wanted that to be on your radar. It's an excellent event that Mr. Triff is key with the other schools in laying on, so that students are just thinking, even at this stage, about what careers they want to be looking at. So that is all I want to say at this stage. If there are any questions, please do ask. And if the webinar has moved on and closed down and you have questions, please do email whoever is the most appropriate to you can email me, and So I'll just stop sharing my screen at that point. So I'd like to say thank you very much to Ben Simmons and Oliver Lomax for their contributions. And thank you very much for your time this evening. And I hope that the feedback that you get in the parents' evenings next week is really helpful for the students so that they can move forward, because we want them obviously to maximize their performance and peak in the real GCSEs. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.